Chapter 2. Terry Nation. I've been cursed with isolation, you see. Bright headlights beamed into bricks and concrete of the sidewalks on Park Street. The trees' branches swayed in the wind, and so did the leaves, like a ballet dancer. Droves of people were scampering into the Park Street MBTA station, entering the metal and glass doors, hastily marching down the stairs. The other buildings on Park Street had closed their windows, but some had the lights on to light the sidewalk for other travellers. And for some, a fancy restaurant on the upper end of Park Street, nearly below the street with no clear way on how to get inside. Samantha wondered where the entrance was. A car drove by, speeding through the red light, honking its horn. The tyres squealed as it turned the corner, and Sam covered her ears as the noise scratched her inner lobes. I take it you didn't get an overseas conference call? Samantha knew Michael couldn't make it every Tuesday because his clients operated in numerous time zones, and sometimes he was forced to stay late. No, I got an email that's not going to be happening for a while, I think. Tensions are rising quickly overseas with Poland and Ukraine. Michael covered a yawn with his hand. What do you mean? Tim's head immediately jerked, turning to Michael with alarm. The lights from inside the church flashed out as the receptionist flicked the switch off and on. Well, he began. His eyes darted back and forth, making sure no one else was listening. Look, you didn't hear it from me, and I'm not sure the validity of this, but it has a lot of people overseas concerned. We won't be trading anything overseas for a while, or that's what I heard. And this is just a rumour, but apparently NATO is disbanding. Sam turned her gaze to the ground, kicking some pebbles to the side. She reflected on what that might mean. If NATO disbands, will the USA be protecting anyone anymore? And if not, who are the allies? Will this turn into a world where every country is independent, just waiting for a large superpower to come in and swallow them up? What will keep those superpowers in check? What will that do to diesel fuel prices? Ukraine and Poland? What cause do they have to be tense with one another? Wait, what? Jennifer jerked her head to him. Why? That's a big development for that to just be a rumour. Michael, you realise it would take 50 liars to even think of spreading a rumour that big. Again, rumour, that's all I know, and you didn't hear it from me, he replied. Dang it, I think I might be fine. I don't know how much my customer takes in imports. I think it's all local, though, Samantha said, interlacing her fingers in between her hands. The only thing that would really affect her in the brokerage will be the gas prices. It makes it difficult to find trucks cheaply to deliver truckloads of groceries. Michael sucked air through his teeth. Yeah, and I'll likely take a pay cut, as many of my associates are over there. But the effect of that is going to change the market considerably. Sam, I think it's only a matter of time before the effects catch up on you, even if this is a rumour. If it's only a rumour, what's the harm? Tim asked. The market changes drastically, constantly. There's no way to accurately predict what it will do. Besides, even these rumours will affect the market eventually, creating a great rift in the economic sphere. These rumours, even if they aren't true, will cause an economic collapse eventually, or just a severe recession, Jennifer explained. The doors opened and the rest of the congregation walked outside. Samantha stared at Jennifer, shocked that she put so many coherent business sentences together in a row. She didn't give Jennifer enough credit, apparently. I'm not an economist. My brother is in stocks, options specifically. He told me about all of this. The market is impossible to predict, but we can get close. Behavioural finance and all that. There's your answer. Even if it's false, it's bad. Michael shook his head and patted his pants with one of his hands. Well, there goes my 401k flying right out the window, Tim exclaimed, putting a hand through his hair. Oh well, I suppose I could opt out of it now. I'll just get taxed heavily on it. Thanks for the heads up. The noise of the rest of the studiers came out to a dull roar. Brian came up to them. He had a thinly shaved beard and moustache. His eyes were wide awake. He was scrawny for his height, built much like a basketball player, only significantly shorter. Hey, you guys coming to Terry Nation? He wrapped his arm around Michael like an old friend and had that overbearingly enthusiastic smile on his face. Samantha rolled her eyes at the mention of Terry Nation, the local pub right around the corner, where they all went out for some dinner and drinks to continue fellowshipping together after the study. After all, why waste a perfectly good night to play catch-up? You know it, Michael shook his hand. Wouldn't miss it. Great, I'm going to head back over there now. I need to recruit some of the newbies. Brian disappeared into the small crowd, talking to a few new faces Samantha didn't recognise. Well, I suppose it's time, Michael said. You all coming? We should start leading the cattle. Such a specific metaphor, Samantha said. Not really. Michael and Tim started walking backwards up Park Street, towards Beacon Street, waving their hands towards them, ushering everyone to follow. Last stop, Terry Nation, who's coming? Michael and Tim started chatting to each other as they briskly walked up the sidewalk towards the City Hall. Many of the other people around them continued to talk. Others started following in small groups. Jennifer linked arms with Samantha. Erin ran towards them from her group. Her giddiness gave her a childlike aura that was only complemented by the freckles across her cheeks. Samantha braced herself for what she expected to be 10 times the amount of Erin's normal bubbliness. "So what are you smiling about?" Samantha asked as they walked onwards. "Well, our office just hired another broker out of nowhere last week. He seems to have already settled in," Erin smiled, "though he often refers to me as the press." "The press?" Samantha's eyes stretched open. "My last name, Gutenberg, the Gutenberg Press." Erin explained. "Okay, but what does that have to do with you smiling already? Do you like him or something?" Samantha teased. "Erin's got a crush again," Jennifer chuckled, elbowing Samantha in the side. "Seriously, if it's not one man, then it's an equally terrifying different man, sometimes a stranger." "I do not," Erin scolded. Samantha assumed Erin was blushing in the dark. "Jennifer, you always find a way to make something innocent sound so inappropriate. Anyway, he's very smart, apparently. He is an excellent resource to go to for help. My job would finally be secure if I went to him for advice." "How do you know that? He just started the job last week," Jennifer asked. "No one learns the job that fast." "He already closed a few $100,000 deals last week," Erin said. "Either he knows what he's doing or he's extremely lucky." "What?" Samantha couldn't believe it. She herself was working a deal with another customer, but she's not making nearly that much in gross revenue, although it was a different business altogether. "How?" "I'm going to ask him tomorrow. I'll let you know. Although, I don't know how that will help you. You're in logistics, not stocks." She snapped her fingers. "Maybe I'll just invest in a mutual fund," Samantha sneered. She had little interest in stocks to begin with. "You two go ahead and talk finance if you want. I'm sticking to my germs, much more interesting," Jennifer said as they turned onto Beacon Street. "So, what's his name?" Samantha leaned into Erin, bumping against her. "He goes by Ted," Erin answered. "He said he's from Ohio. Not a very social person, though, doesn't talk much. So, enough about this individual that neither Sam nor I are going to meet. July 4th. Erin, are you still coming? I need to order the canoes, and I need to have an idea of how many I need to reserve. We plan on meeting at Kendall Square at 6 p.m. "Yes, I'll go," Erin exclaimed. "I'd love to go. I might be late. I need to skip lunch to leave work early." "Don't worry about food. There'll be plenty. I'll be packing sandwiches again," Jennifer said. They were approaching Terry Nation, which was on the corner heading back down towards Tremont Street. The City Hall was staring down at them, with the lights behind the gates, and the Joseph Hooker statue riding on a horse. "That's probably not the best thing. You might want to think of something else." "Sandwiches don't taste good out in the open sea," Samantha suggested. "Maybe we can get Michael to cook something with his smoker. Or perhaps just bring some vegetables or something." "But poor dear Erin will be hungry. She's skipping her lunch after all," Jennifer chuckled as she opened the door into Terry Nation. "I mean, to be fair, most of us, except me, will not have time to actually eat something after work. I mean, you get out late enough as it is. It'll take a few hours. It's fine," Samantha replied. They walked through the restaurant section of the bar, walking through the wide hallway, and took a left at the statue of a little girl flying a kite at the side. Michael and Tim were already sat in the back of the upstairs bar, talking to one another about something, while sipping on their own drink. Michael was always trying the weird concoctions that the bartender mixed. He was like Scott's guinea pig. "What's going on, Sam? What can I get you?" Scott wore a black vest over a white button-up shirt and black slacks behind his bar. Everyone on the waitstaff wore the same uniform. "House cab is fine," she answered, pulling out her card. "I'll close out." Scott took the card and went to pour her a quick glass of red Cabernet wine. He always had a very heavy pour. "Scott, I'll take your specialty, whatever that is at this moment," Jennifer asked. Like Michael, she was also an adventurous drinker. "I'll also take a cider. Bottle, please," Erin called out, her hand raised as her other hand reached for her pocketbook. "Together or separate?" Scott called as he reached behind the bar and undid the cap of a frosted bottle of hard cider. "Together. I'll buy it," Erin said, nudging Jennifer in the side. "The least I can do if I'm trusting you with my food on the 4th of July. Erin winked at Jennifer and squeezed her shoulder. He then made the very odd drink with bourbon, triple sec, Coke, muddle mint and cucumbers. Jennifer frowned curiously as the drink was handed to her. Her eyes skimmed over the physical ingredients, noting this beverage, whatever it might be, should taste refreshing. However, such a taste would likely contrast unwelcomely with the bourbon. Well, this is different. She took a sip, and made a puckered face as if filled with something that was too sour. And it did contrast the way Jennifer expected it to. Did Michael like this? He liked it, Scott started chuckling. Do you? It's certainly different. I'll give you 10 points for originality. Her face cringed. I haven't decided if I'm going to like this or not yet. Give me a few minutes. Gotcha, he chuckled, quickly moving back to address the rest of his guests. Brian came in with his crowd of nearly 15 different guests. Looks like he succeeded in inviting the new people here. Well, this certainly is great for the community. They're all new to Boston, or many of them anyways. This isn't a bad spot to be, Sam thought. Brian's friendliness and his great charisma was what kept Samantha interested in these little late-night gatherings, and surprisingly, kept her going to Park Street Church instead of some local church. Samantha knew that Scott was going to have a good night. She sipped her wine as she gazed up at the TV screen. Scott generally kept the news on in the back, unless they requested the sports channel. He was always very friendly, though when she first came here, he did seem like a tired and disgruntled man. He couldn't have been more than 30. He had a smile underneath that thick beard of his. Sam looked over to Brian again, noticing he took out a little pen and piece of paper, engaging enthusiastically in conversation with everyone he invited. He spent more time with the new faces than the old ones, nodding as they spoke, showing his elite listening skills. Sam guessed quite accurately he was offering to buy them around tonight by jotting things down on his notepad. Brian leaned over the bar top and slapped his hand on it and looked intently in Scott's eyes as they engaged in some unrelated conversation which Sam couldn't hear. Brian read off the slip of paper, and Scott immediately punched some buttons on the electronic touchpad and printed out a receipt, handing it to Brian before hastily disappearing behind the bar. Brian immediately returned to the newcomers, turning their hesitant smiles to enthusiastic ones. Samantha thought Brian was better at making anyone feel comfortably at home. Then she noticed something familiar. The hair on her head felt like they stood on ends, and the chills came over her, cascading like a powerful wind. Goosebumps rose up from her arms. She looked around, not trying to alarm anyone, hoping this might have been her imagination. Other people around the bar were putting on their sweatshirts or wrapping themselves with their arms. She chose to ignore it. Someone probably just turned the thermostat down, but damn, it's cold. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed someone. He was sitting by himself at the other end of the bar, perhaps 10 paces from her, drinking a glass of red wine like hers. Merlot or Cab? It was the same man from Saturday. First at the crosswalk, then inside the garden, now here. And it seems the last time the temperature dropped so much and so quickly was with him around. Who was he? Scott brought this man a plate of mashed potatoes. This man still seemed to be smiling very widely as he thanked Scott for the plate. Scott asked him if he needed anything else, but he declined, and said, "I have more than I require right now, thank you." She took a closer look as the man took a fork and put it into the mashed potatoes and started eating it. Sam squinted her eyes at the man to see some lined scars on his face. The words barely made it to her ears with the volume of the bar. Twice she saw the man in a social setting. Twice she saw the man isolated in the social setting. Perhaps he was new to Boston and looking for friends, perhaps socially inept. Well, I'm not Brian, but I'll see what I can do. I at least know something to spin off on, she thought. She took a sip from her glass, scanning the bar top for Scott when he got a second. She raised her arm and called him over. Scott walked over, drying a beer glass with a towel. Scott leaned over the bar, both palms rested firmly on the bar top after setting the glass down. "What's up, Sam?" "That man over there." She leaned in over the bar, pointing a finger to the man in the corner, retracting the finger around her wine glass. Scott turned his head briefly to look. "That's Ted. He's been coming here lately." "Do you know what he does?" Sam asked. "No, he's a polite person, but a man of few words." "Well, thanks for that. That was it. Thank you." She started walking quietly towards him. He ate silently. She was standing behind him as he was engrossed in his food, scarfing it down quickly. He took a sip of his wine again, turning the glass and looking into it as if he was lost in thought. "Well, well, well, so a rat sneaks behind me, eh?" said the man. He never bothered to look from his wine. "To what exactly do I owe a pleasure such as this?" Samantha abruptly halted. Her wineglass trembled in her hand as she looked down at the ripples inside the glass. "Did I make a sound? No, wait, could he smell my perfume, or was it the wine?" The scent of Cabernet was coming closer and closer. I could smell it approaching me, and then suddenly the scent just lingered. You can't be more than 23 inches behind me. He turned in his stool and looked up to her, and his smile was still wide. How may I help you? Startling? Well, I'm not a rat, she chuckled nervously. And yet you came to me as silent as a rat. Well, he's not socially inept, that is certain. He's eloquent and very formal. She found him to be unnerving, yet intriguing all the same. Rats can be silent nuisances, but I couldn't help but notice that I've seen you before, she commented. Well, this is the heart of Boston. Odds are there are many faces we see again and again, and maybe we recognise a few reoccurring faces here and there, but we never make a point to meet one of them. I know I certainly don't, he replied. His smile never faded. He stood up and rose his glass to hers. She clinked their glasses together. Cheers. Sam found him to be more mysterious, greeting her with a friendly smile, but the words comparing her to a rat were a bit unsettling. He was confident, this was evident, but was there something about her he found to be untrusting? She bit her tongue, fearing she made some kind of social error. Brian is better suited for this, but I can't back down now. That is something true you have just said. My name is Samantha Harris, she said. She brought her hand out to meet his other hand to shake it. He reached out his hand to meet hers, shaking it. Samantha could hear the bones in her hand crack. He had a very firm and strong grip. My name is Ted Anderson. It's a pleasure to meet you. She didn't want to make it too obvious she asked about him. To be sure, Miss Harris, the pleasure is all mine. Now, I ask again, to what do I owe the pleasure of such an introduction? There was something different about him, though. His brown, watery eyes looked right into hers. Ted appeared to be in his mid-20s, but the eyes told a different story, as if they were much older than his body. I ran into you twice on Saturday, right on the corner of Park and Tremont, and then again on the same day at the garden, towards the end of that night, she admitted. You seemed to be by yourself while everybody else was grouped together or coupled. Was that around the time the temperature dropped? He asked. Her eyes blinked repeatedly. So I'm not crazy. You felt that too? I thought I was just imagining things, she stammered as she took another sip from her glass, looking cautiously at Ted. She felt something in her gut, like she should be wary of this man. Numerous people were with her that night, and only she and Ted felt it, and only they acknowledged it. Why didn't any of them feel anything? Yes, I felt it also, he said. Well, that's New England for you. Yes, she said, lowering her voice a little bit. Have you been around Boston for very long? A few weeks, he answered. What brought you here? She thought to ask another question, hoping to find something to latch on to. She could hear multiple steps behind her, and the music played from the speakers, and the chatter sounded like white noise. Work, he answered. Where are you from? She was dissatisfied with the answer, as simple as it was. Sure, it very well could be true, but there wasn't enough information released from him to pose any meaningful conversation. Ohio. What part? You're like a steel trap. Delaware. He shifted on his stool as he took another bite of his mashed potatoes. There's a store I deliver to frequently over there. Excitedly, she finally found something. Oh, and what is it that you do? His expression didn't change, but he leaned back against the bar and crossed his hands over his chest. I work for a 3PL. I deliver groceries for a major wholesaler. I'm a broker. Dang it. She wasn't expecting him to start asking questions. Not that she had anything really to hide from him, but she wasn't done trying to figure out who he was. As am I. I deal with stocks, he answered, and options. It finally hit her. He might work with Erin. Do you know Erin the Gutenberg Press? Yes, I work with her. He laughed. Yes, she laughed. That is exactly what she said you call her. She said something about you today on our way over here. Terrible things, I'm sure, he replied, never lessening that smile. No, she said you're very good at your job. No, I'm just very lucky. He got a buzz from his phone. Excuse me a moment. He pulled out his phone and opened something up. Samantha assumed it was a work-related email. He read it intently. He shut the screen off from his phone and put it back in his pocket. Well, on one hand, that was terrible. On the other, I'm glad I sold all of those. What? Oh, NATO just disbanded and Russia just declared war on Ukraine, he said nonchalantly. I just sold most of my foreign assets. Those values are going to drop overnight. I wonder, how will the rest of the European Union fare? Will they follow suit? Will they get involved? Most likely, as they have always done. It's unfortunate that the world came to this. How do you know? She asked. Well, I guess that confirms the rumour Michael told them, but how exactly are you this calm about it? Ukraine is apparently pissing everyone off. Samantha knew that national allegiances were trembling as of late. The news told them that much. To her it seemed most everyone was inches away from everyone's throats at any given time, and Russia and Ukraine were now the only confirmed cases of political collapse. How soon would this uncertainty reach America? Sam couldn't help but wonder. Like I said, I'm very lucky. However, some of the higher-ups might think I actually know something when I don't. He let out a brief sigh. Oh well, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. She turned abruptly. Michael! She waved at him as he was now talking with Erin. Samantha noticed that Erin frowned at them with her pouty eyes. She noted that Erin seemed to be boy-crazy and didn't expect that kind of behaviour from someone going to church weekly. But we all have our own shortcomings. Ted, this is my boyfriend, Michael. She introduced them. Michael walked over with a friendly smile on his face and introduced himself. Michael shook Ted's hand, and Samantha could hear the bones in Michael's hand cracking. Firm grip, I like it. Michael released his hand. So, Michael, you know that thing you talked about earlier? I said you didn't hear it from me, he said defensively, abruptly turning to her, frowning. It's on the news already. She frowned, knowing that since these rumours were true, global collapse might not be far behind. She guessed this would immediately affect Michael's line of work drastically. Wait, what? Michael asked. Already? I just found out about it, but I thought those were rumours. Rumours have an unfortunate way of being steeped in truth. Odds are, if something is completely unbelievable, it is probably true, Ted said. I knew of the rumour, but thought nothing of it until this morning. Thank God I followed my gut. I can sleep peacefully now. Well, it's only a matter of time then. Someone's going to punch someone important, Mike replied. Ted threw his head back in laughter. I think that already happened, Samantha said. Apparently Russia's on a warpath again. The phone vibrated in Ted's pocket again. He pulled it out of his inside pocket and looked at his notification. He read the notification. That's not the only one on a warpath. Well, I guess it was only inevitable this would happen. What now? Samantha asked. She was considering how this news was going to affect her. It was clearly going to affect her business. Oil prices are going to rise. Rates for truck drivers are going to rise to reflect that change. Her rates are contracted. Renegotiating her contracted rates is likely to be fruitless. Her individual margins are going to decline. Her profitability is going to plummet. How soon before this all hits home? Trade deals with China aren't going well, apparently, Ted explained. That being said, it's only a matter of time before someone declares war. It's like 20 years ago. Those were not good times, Michael said. Every major nation was at everyone's throats. Precisely. The global economy was trash then. Ted rose his hand in the air. He dropped it back down. And just like my hand will probably be free-falling for a while, well, when it starts to decline, that's when we'll be free-falling. You seem to know a lot about this, Michael said, taking a sip of his exotic but potentially terrible-tasting drink. I was in the army before I came here. China was never too keen on Americans. He kept his smile, but reluctantly gave that answer. I know too much already. Samantha knew this would pique Michael's interest. His brother was in the 75th Ranger Regiment. What was your... My occupation in the army is classified, above top secret, he said softly. I can't disclose any information on what I did. I hope you understand. I do, Michael said. My brother is in the army. He's much the same way. Doesn't give out much information than what's necessary. Erin finally walked over, her hand resting across her chest. Ted, did you just get Adam's email? Yes, Gutenberg's press, I did. I got both of them. Well, if you have any foreign assets, I'd suggest selling them now. The market is still open. You may find a buyer, but if you don't, I'd advise holding on to it and riding it out or selling it as soon as possible. This was clearly meant for Erin, and he gave her advice to work on, but Samantha picked up on something, noting just how volatile the stock markets are. Sell now unless you can't, then hold on to it until it rises again, or just sell later. The window of trading that fast was small. Did you already sell yours? She asked. How did you know this would happen? I didn't. I just guessed. You should listen to those rumours more closely, he chuckled. This is going to be a nightmare, Michael said, ruffling his hand through his hair. Jennifer popped up with her drink in hand. Michael, you have terrible taste in this stuff. Why do I let you talk me into these things? Samantha felt a weight lift off her chest as her attention was immediately turned away from the horrific events happening with the world to something, albeit random, more pleasant. For that, she was exceedingly thankful for Jennifer's interruption. First of all, I didn't say anything, he laughed, nudging her shoulder with his. I mean, seriously, this is disgusting. Why do you drink this? She turned her gaze to Ted. So, who is this hogging up the party? I mean, you can barely call this a party, Samantha said as Erin was back onto her phone, monitoring her emails. I have to go. I'll see you next Tuesday. Erin walked over to her green purse. Samantha waved as Erin walked out the bar, relieved as Erin's constant pining after men was growing tiresome. This is Ted. You know, that Ted. Samantha clicked her tongue as she pointed to Erin on her way out. What Ted? Oh, that Ted. Well, I'll say little to compromise anything. I'm Jennifer, and welcome to our little dysfunctional family, she joked. Never mind me, I'm the crazy one. Samantha chuckled. She's never boring. Speaking of Ted, Jennifer seemed to take over the conversation. She would have made a great executive. We're going to rent a few canoes over on the Charles on the 4th of July. I know it's about a month away. You should totally come with. Fireworks over a body of water, Ted said. I appreciate the sentiment, miss. However, I'm afraid I must decline. Oh, well, that's too bad. Everyone here is going. She turned her head as if looking for someone. Now, where is Brian? He drove Tim home, Michael answered. Tim had an early meeting for an event that's scheduled tomorrow. He couldn't be out too late. Such a shame. He really is personable. More fun than I am. She wrapped her arm around Michael as he smiled. Samantha and Jennifer's minds were thinking alike. No matter how hesitant one could be, Brian could always get someone to bend. I doubt that very much, Ted commented, making eye contact with her. Jennifer's hazel eyes gleamed in the dim light of the bar. Oh well, I guess you can't come under any circumstances then, huh? Nothing we can do to persuade you? Jennifer tried to coax some more amiable answer out of him. Unfortunately no, Ted answered, but I appreciate the offer all the same. Oh well, what about Tuesday next week? Are you doing anything after you get off work? Samantha pitched in, eager to see more of this mysterious person. She barely struck the surface of who he was, and to her seemed one-dimensional. She was eager to get the full picture and get the story of those ragged eyes and enthusiastic smile. The contrast didn't sit well with her. He hesitated. Sam briefly noticed his hand shaking as he hid it in his pocket. Depends if I decide to leave work or not. I'm a workaholic, and perhaps that depends completely on the rest of the information I know you are inclined to give me. We have a Bible study that we go to on Tuesdays. It starts at 7 at Park Street. This next week is Tasty Tuesdays, so there are snacks before. Samantha continued, linking arms with Michael. I think Sarah's making baklava, Michael said, sipping his who-knows-what-it-tastes-like drink. Oh yes, that's a splendid idea, Jennifer butted in again, clapping her hands together. Seriously, Ted, you must come. It's much less of a commitment than going canoeing with us in July, especially if you're new to Boston. It might be nice to have some kind of community that doesn't include drowning yourself in work. I'm not going to lie, I do like working, Ted explained, sipping more of his wine. But with everything else that's going on in the world, I likely won't be able to find anything worth buying in those overseas markets anymore. What's one day going to hurt? Where is it? Samantha began. It's the church on Tremont and Park Street. The door is open on the other side of Park Street where the Freedom Trail, he asked. Yes, that's the one, she answered. 7 o'clock p.m.? Yes, but it's Tasty Tuesday, so you don't have to show up right at 7. You can show up a little earlier, Samantha answered, suddenly conscientious about how much she'd been speaking. It is the best time for a newcomer. We'd love to see you there, but no pressure. I'll be there. He drank the rest of his wine and grabbed his tab. I'll see you Tuesday. Samantha smiled as he left, and she felt a weight being lifted off her chest. I'm still not Brian. Brian could have gotten him to go out for the 4th for sure. So, how did you meet him? Michael asked. Spill it, Sam, spill it. Details, girl, Jennifer exclaimed. I need details. I saw him twice on Saturday. First at the corner of the church and then at the garden, she answered. Like when you saw the temperature dropped? Michael inquired. He seemed a little more curious now. Yes, he was there when the temperature dropped, and then again when the temperature dropped again in here. Didn't you feel it? Yes, Michael admitted, but that could have been anything. I wouldn't worry about something so trivial as the temperature dropping, especially here in New England. The temperature and weather changes daily. Besides, if it happened here, it was probably just the air conditioning. He glanced at his watch. And look at the time. It's time to be going. It's closing time.